So, what I want to explore today is the concept of a meaningful Rosh Hashanah. Everybody craves meaning. Viktor Frankl created or rather affirmed the truth that people knew for millennia, and that is human beings search for meaning. We're all searching for meaning, and that's the quest of life. Unlike other psychologists who felt that we're chasing our own ego, or we're chasing our sexuality, or we're chasing war, he felt that we're chasing meaning, and that's at the core of our search for meaning. And the question is, what is meaning? Is meaning a fuzzy feeling when you walk out of a shiur or you walk out of a good concert? Like when somebody says that was meaningful, what do they mean? What does the word meaningful actually mean? What does it mean to each and every one of us when we're looking for experiences over this Chag? What are we actually looking for? What do we want out of this day? What do we want Rosh Hashanah to give us? What do we want Yom Kippur to give us? How will we rate it as a successful? So the dictionary, which I just searched, says that meaningful is having a serious, important, or useful quality or purpose. Serious, important, or useful quality or purpose. That's pretty vague because it's all three: serious, important, or useful quality. So each and every one of us is looking for something that will change us. The word meaning, the way it's used by most of us, is I want to be changed. I want to be moved to change. I want to be able to walk out and what? And that's what I want to dissect with you for the next few minutes. Why is it so hard for us to change? What is meaning that gives us the ability to change? Okay, because let's spill the beans before we even continue. And that is, we all know what we're supposed to be doing. And I'm not even talking Jewishly, like, oh, you're supposed to keep Shabbos, you're going to hell. I'm not talking Jewishly. I'm not talking, am I better, Israel? I'm not talking in a specific area, but each and every one of us knows where we're supposed to be. We know what our calling is. It's no secret. We are called upon to be the best people we can be, to have the best marriages, and to have the best, not best compared to others, compared to ourselves, and the best parenting, and the best human being, and to be the most dignified, and to be the most ehrlich, and to be the most generous and genuine. And we are called upon to be awesome, 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 awesome stuff. We have an incredible capacity for change, and we know it. And yet, as human beings, we really struggle to change. So what happens? We show up to a service on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, and we say, you know what? I hope that something inside me shifts and makes me want to change. I want to be able to get that real desire. I want that oomph. I want to feel change. Now, I'm going to say a few controversial things today just because why not? You know, it's early in the week's barely started, too blah. How many people have ever changed from an experience that happened outside of them? I don't know. I can't tell you what happened to you. I could tell you what happens to me. The real changes in my life don't happen at a motivational speech or not even a motivational sermon, maybe not even a motivational farbrengen. They are when something clicks in me, when something clicks and suddenly I get, and you know what? I have to do this. I have to do this. Very often it happens when you have no other choice. Like the example with my shofar blowing, I had no other choice. There was nobody to blow shofar. So I learned how to blow after convincing myself for 3.5 decades that I can't blow. And suddenly I can blow because necessity is the mother of creativity. But the point is, change happens in a very internal, private space. Yes, a sermon could touch us and a sheer could move us, but to change us is only us. To change, to literally change the way I do something, to suddenly make a decision, I will no longer scream all day. Fine, whatever the decision is. I will really listen to other people. I will be less selfish. A great sermon from the best speaker on the planet comes over here and preaches to you for 45 minutes, mixing jokes and anecdotes and stories, and sells you the Brooklyn Bridge about how terrible being selfish is. Still won't change you. It will move you. You might even find it meaningful. But change? Mm-mm. Think about how many moving and meaningful things you've been to at your life. I'd imagine hundreds, if not thousands. Whether it was a meaningful holiday or a meaningful speech or meaningful music or meaningful, family time, whatever it is, moments that felt beautiful and warm and fuzzy. And we gave them like that was just so meaningful, that was so powerful. But ultimately, did they transform us? Because I think that we have to move from the word meaning to transform, to literally change not ourselves, but what we do and how we do it. Just think about how crazy the world had to go during COVID for the last 6 months in order to change things. For example, we all know that weddings were getting way too lavish and barmies and everything, and it was just over the top. I know some people will defend it. It was over the top. It was unnecessary. If you have the extra 150K, put it into savings or give it to charity or give it to your kid as a gift to start his business in 30 years, in 10 years. And then suddenly, the only way it actually changed was necessity. We had no choice, so we moved our barmies to Zoom. Nothing changed it till then. Maybe one person here, another person there decide they'll have a small barmy for family, but fundamentally, it didn't shift. We could all give great speeches about how it's so materialistic and it's not really the point, and the barmy and the bati, it's really about becoming an adult, etc. Blah blah blah. It's not about the outfit they're wearing. It's not about the balloons, and yet we all fell into the thing hook, line, and sinker because that's just what you do. Even though technically we can all give very good explanations how petty it is. And you can even have very meaningful talks about it. But until I actually change or until circumstances force me to change, I don't change. You could be so moved at a speech, you could come to a Rosh Hashanah shir or a drasha, and the rabbi and the chazan choir can be so good, they even move you to tears. And it feels good, it feels warm, it feels like I connected. And that's great. It's great to connect. But ultimately, we're here not just to connect, we're here to grow. We're told that each blade of grass has an angel allocated to it who hits it every moment of every day, telling it, Gedal, grow, grow, grow. Now, if every blade of grass has that, could you imagine every human? Right now, each and every one of us at every given moment have all our ancestors, all the angels of our past, and all the best voices within us calling and saying, grow, grow, push yourself, do more, be be greater than you are your behavior. Don't change yourself, but activate your greatness. Discover your incredible potential. Become who you were intended to be. Just think about how many voices we have inside of us begging us to grow. But on the other hand, inertia, laziness, or simple gravity makes us not want to grow. We just sit uncomfortable. I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable. So is my marriage perfect? No. But if I have to go to therapy, then I have to admit it's not perfect in a very real way. So I prefer living in a mediocre marriage because it's comfortable. Because change is more uncomfortable than the imperfect reality I'm living in now. So often the solution to our problems are so obvious. I'm not talking about like illness or other stuff, but if we were really open to advice from friends, really open for advice from people we respect, a lot of our issues have at least partial solutions. Some of them are really tough. Some of them are about shifting our whole perspective. For example, somebody who ends up falling into bad relationships once, twice, three times might have to have a very hard talk with somebody who tells them about their pattern. But ultimately, if they have that talk and then they work on themselves, they can solve it. We can transform. That's a fundamental human condition. Animals don't change themselves. Humans do. If we can't change, then this whole Rosh Hashanah, whole Yom Kippur, whole free choice thing is a fraud. We can change. Some of us might need therapy to change. Some of us might need medication to change. Some of us might need new friends. Some of us might need to emigrate. That's fine. But the point is, it's within our control. And yet the resistance to change is immense. To get somebody to acknowledge and say, I have a problem and I must solve it. That the problem is me and I'm the solution. Those two things are some of the most, if not the most transformative words that a person can say and then act upon, which will actually change their life. I am the problem. Now, there's other problems that are not me, but it's not for me to solve. But whatever is my problem, I acknowledge it and then I go forward and solve it. Determined. We must be able to acknowledge our things, our stuff. I'll be honest, one of the things that I struggle with the most, and specifically with men, but women as well, and that is the inability for us to admit our imperfections. Yeah, like, I'm not saying admitting like in a funny way, but for real, to sit there saying, I'm a good person, but I have real issues. I have to deal with them. I maybe need serious intervention, but I am persevering and I will stick it through thick and thin until I get to the other side, no matter what. In today's day and age, on the one hand, we have more issues than ever before, even though that could be or couldn't be. But here's a fact. We also have more resources than we've ever had before. We have access to information, to therapists, to doctors, to psychiatrists, to coaches, to every kind of thing under the sun, good friends. We have access to ourselves. We have time for ourselves. We have so many opportunities to be the best people we can be. And yet, so many of us are not going there. But life is about growth. Life is about waking up each day and saying, yesterday was good, but it wasn't good enough for today. I'm not comfortable staying where I was. I have to become more. I have to be my true self. I have to activate more parts of myself, no matter what it takes. No matter how embarrassing or vulnerable or heartbreaking the journey is. I want to do better. It's the irony that usually people that need the therapy the most are the people that don't go because they're the most defensive about it. I'm not the problem in the marriage, you are. You go to therapy. That's exactly the point. The second anybody says that, whether husband or wife, they're the problem in the marriage. The second you sit there saying, you're the problem, not me, I don't need therapy. In general, if someone says, I don't need or can't have any benefit from therapy, I have a problem with that. So I'm not saying everyone has to go to therapy, but if somebody really believes that there's nothing for them to learn, nothing to go to discover in therapy, that's extremely egocentric or defensive, rather. What are you scared of? You're really scared of sitting for an hour and talking? What's going to happen? The worst that's going to happen is you'll say something you already knew. Nebuch. So why are you fighting it so hard? Why? Why do we fight the things that will help us change, whatever they are, to each and every one of us? It's in our own thing. Why do we fight so hard? Because again, you could come to 50 Rosh Hashanahs and have 50 meaningful Rosh Hashanahs. Oh, wow, Rav, this Rosh Hashanah 2019, 2020 was unbelievable. Unbelievably what? Fuzzy? Great. Baruch Hashem. It's good to know. Investment worked. We're feeling fuzzy right now. Sukkot was fuzzy and Yom Kippur was fuzzy and it was motivational, it was inspirational, it was so classy and the text was so meaningful. All this wonderful stuff. But fundamentally, what happened? Did I change? Not did I make a resolution to change. Not did I think about change. Not did I say, if change is easy for me, then I'll go to change. None of that, but change. Actual change. To break a habit. To do things differently. To go to the places within us that are uncomfortable and dig there and sit there and solve the issue. Life is about growth. That's what life is. Every day it's God coming and telling us, grow more. Because if it's the same as yesterday, I don't need another yesterday. I don't need another yesterday. Neither does God, neither do you. What's the point of living 2 days, the same day twice? I mean, that's Groundhog Day, and it's shocking. The point is not, we're not here to live lives of stagnation. You know what happens to water? If water stops moving, it gets rotten, it gets disgusting, it gets a smell. That's what happens when you have a pool of water that doesn't move anywhere like a pool. Unless you're constantly putting in chemicals, it gets verstunken very quickly. Loses color, loses odor, loses everything. However, if water's flowing, then water's flowing and it stays clear. Because inertia is not good for any of us. Movement is. But movement is not just keeping yourselves busy for this. I have to be busy. I'm busy. I'm busy. Baruch Hashem, I'm busy. What? Busy doing what? Busy living. Fine. So Baruch Hashem, you're not bored, you're busy. Fantastic. But if you look at yourself now and you look at yourself 10 years ago, has your character evolved? Yes? Fantastic. How much? And how much more would it have evolved if I wouldn't have resisted it so hard? Wouldn't have fought, no, I'm not going there. Don't push me to that space. I hate that space. I don't want to go there. I don't want to acknowledge that I'm an anxious person. Or I don't want to acknowledge that I'm an angry person. Or I don't want to acknowledge that I have a very unhealthy relationship to money. I don't want to acknowledge it. No, I'm a good person. Look what I do. I volunteer. This, that. But you know that you have an unhealthy relationship to money. I don't know, you struggle to share, or you share too much. Get angry too often, get triggered too often. Normal human conditions. No one's saying you're bad or I'm a bad person for having this. We're not bad for having anxiety. It's a human condition. But am I acknowledging it and saying, I have anxiety and I need to deal with it, whether through therapy, whether through medically, whether through spirituality, whatever, but I'm going to solve this. I don't want to be this anxious in 12 months from now. And whatever it takes, I will fight and fight and fight until I get somewhere. That's determination. That's real change. You know, usually comes Rosh Hashanah and we put on mitzvah cards and we ask people to keep our mitzvahs. This year, there's no mitzvah cards, there's no cards, you can't give anything, and the person takes kosher and mezuzah and mikvah, etc. It's all beautiful. And that's important. But real change is change of character, not change of action. You could do another mitzvah. Till now you lit one candle, now you light two candles. Until now you lit Friday night, maybe a bit late, and now you light Friday night on time. Great and important. But transformation is character, to sit there changing how we navigate this world, to be more of our healthy selves. When I see, and again, I'm talking for myself, I can only talk my life. When I see how many times my decisions are not coming from a place of health, or a place of anxiety, nerves, defensiveness, immaturity, tiredness. I don't have to beat myself up and scream at myself, but I do have to say, lady, come on. That's not how you make decisions. You make decisions from a place of health. And if you're making a decision right now from a place of dysfunction, that is going to backfire, because bad decisions always backfire. Am I parenting from a place of health, or from a place of defensiveness, or from a place of not creating the same mistakes my parents did to me, or all those other things which are just phobias, but they're not healthy? And to acknowledge, sit there saying, yeah, I have an issue with parenting. I'm trying too hard not to be like my mother. Whatever. I'm saying, let's say that's an issue. If you're trying too hard not to be like your mother, that's an issue. Even if she was terrible and dysfunctional, because you're not going anywhere. You're just running away from somewhere. Not being somebody doesn't make you into something. It's just not. It's living in a not. I'm not you. And by the way, all those people are saying, I'm not my father, I'm not my mother. Yeah, mazel tov. 20 years later, you're acting exactly like them, 9 out of 10 times. Because you can't just not be something. What are you? So your parents were too indulgent, you're too stingy with your kids. Your parents were stingy, you're too indulgent. It's like the cycle is so predictable often. You're like, guys, that's not how we live. We live from a place of health as much as possible. And at least if we aren't healthy, we should have a good friend or a spouse who could tell us the truth in our face, and we could be able to tolerate it. Even if we get red on the face. Nobody likes getting slapped across the face. But at least bite our tongue and sit there saying, you know what? You're right. And maybe it's unpleasant to hear, but I will work on it, because it's not okay. Because I can't stay this way forever. Because I have to be my better self. So you're going to ask, sheesh, what's Rabbi on today? Is it the alcohol? I'll be honest, I'm sharing a very personal journey. It's a journey that I've been through very recently. Quite a while ago, I was diagnosed with ADHD, adult ADHD. As a child, I never was diagnosed. I was never taken to diagnosis. And for a long while, I decided to live with it. I decided to, I'm not going to treat it. I'm not going to go to therapy for it. It's just it's part of my personality. It's part of my character. And at some stage recently, some stage during lockdown, I said, you know what? I have to go down the rabbit hole. I have to understand, is it nature? Is it nurture? Is it affecting me as a human being? Is it affecting my family life? Is it affecting my marriage? Is it affecting my rabbinics? And the answer to some of that was yes. And then I sit there saying, okay, so what's holding you back from going there? Whatever there is. Shame, fear, defensiveness, acknowledging in your mid-30s that you've lived with something for so long and you've been in denial. And at some stage, I was forced to overcome it. And recently, I've gone on a whole, whatever, on a whole journey to solve it, multifaceted journey to, if not solve it, at least deal with it in the best way possible. And it just hit me going through this journey how resistant we are to change, how resistant I am to change, how much I will fight and kick and scream till the very last moment. Please, please, please. I don't want to go there. I don't want to have to admit it. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm telling you, I'm fine. And you are fine. But most of you, you're okay. You're living a functional life. You're fine. Well, if fine is okay, isn't better even better? Now that's my challenge, one of my challenges, one amongst millions. And I hope and I pray that I do work with that challenge and use it for what it has to offer me in the best way possible, but not let it ruin me or undermine my potential in any way, as much as I can. But what's your journey? What are you hiding that you know, or that you wouldn't find out in 5 seconds if you asked the people closest to you? You think I'm an angry person? Oh yes, Mom. What am I hiding from? And how much courage would it take to go there? Sometimes, I'll be honest, religion is an escape for these journeys, because you sit there convincing yourself you change. Look, I even became Shomer Shabbos. Fantastic. Beautiful. Really is. It's a mitzvah of Hashem. But did you become Shomer Shabbos because you want to change, or because you want to change but you want relatively easy things? And Shabbos, even though it sounds hard, is much easier than character. Much easier. Because changing a behavior versus acknowledging your weaknesses is much, much harder. And the reason I shared that, I wasn't planning on sharing it, is because while I was talking, I was thinking to myself and I was saying, you know what, instead of just talking a riddle, say your piece. And if that inspires anybody to go in their journey and to be willing to take whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. Some of us, we have a stigma against therapy. Some of us, we have stigma against medication. Some of us, we have a stigma against talking to anybody. I remember spending a time in Switzerland in the summer where, in that place, and I spoke about in the share a few weeks ago about mental illness, in that place, technology had a fever was like weakness, like sissies have fever, but big people don't. To acknowledge our struggles, to acknowledge our issues, our imperfect marriages, some of it which can never be solved, and some of it which can. At least whatever is within my control, not his or hers. To acknowledge that I'm a good person even if I'm not perfect, but that's not an excuse to stay imperfect. In other words, whether I change or not change, we're all good people. We're all good people. That in any way, that doesn't take away our value as a human being. That's not why we should change, to become more valuable. No, we're fundamentally valuable just by the fact that we're created in the image of Hashem. The reason we want to change is because we just want to live better. We want to live a more fuller life, more wholehearted life, a more focused life, a life where we show up our full, whole selves. And that journey is so, so important. And nothing could substitute it. Not religion, not meaningful experiences, not shiurim. Nothing can come and replace the value that this offers. The fundamental need for us to transform ourselves. That when you look at a person, you see that they are an oved. They're somebody who serves Hashem. They are a servant of Hashem. What do you mean servant? They've broken themselves. They've broken the bad parts of themselves. They've overcome. They work. They have a work ethic of character refinement. They see it as work to see me getting a better person, for me to live more fully, for me to love more fully, for me to connect more fully, for me to study more fully, for me to be myself. That is the challenge of a life. And we spend so many years resisting it with stigmas and paranoias and denials and defensiveness. Think about how many tools we have against the truth. It's your fault, it's not my fault, it's your fault, it's my mother's fault. She raised me that way, my dad, my this, dysfunctional, the Holocaust, the riots, the climate in South Africa, the transition, apartheid. I mean, just how many excuses we create. And they're good and they're even true. But life's not about going through with having good excuses. Really? That's the point. You show up to God. I've often given the analogy that people show up to heaven after 120, and God says, okay, so what's your story? And the fellow says, or the lady says, honestly, God, I wasn't great. But you know what? I have a lot of excuses. And they take out the list, and as God says, new, so why were you in a dysfunctional relationship? It was his fault. Ah, okay. And why did you fight with your siblings, all three of them? They all picked on me. Okay. And why did you never show up to shul? Because the rabbi gave a sermon that ticked me off, and I decided I'm never coming back. Okay, Baruch Hashem. Excuses and excuses and excuses. So forgive me for my imagination, but I believe that this is the way it works in heaven. I've never been there. I haven't spoken to anybody who's been there and came back. And if they did, I wouldn't trust them, usually. But here's the way I think it works. It's not the way it works, but my imagination. That if you come up to heaven and you don't have excuses, you go to hell. If you come up to heaven and you don't need excuses, you go to heaven. But if you come to heaven and you have excuses, then you go to a special place. So you can't go to hell because you have excuses. You can't go to heaven because you haven't done it right. So where do you go? You go to a place that feels exactly like heaven. Everything's comfortable and beautiful and fantastic. But all around the beautiful, magnificent villa are screens. And all those screens project all day, every day, is the life you could have lived if you stopped giving excuses and you actually lived your life. And they say that the screams coming from that place are much louder than the ones coming from hell. Enough of excuses. They're convenient. Sometimes they're even, comfortable. And sometimes we're not in the mood of change. We could use them. But we're not here to excuse our mediocrity. We're here to push, not to become perfect, but to become our better selves. To be able to look at our demons and acknowledge them. To realize it's not my fault or your fault that we have demons. Hashem created us that way. We all fight our skeletons. Different skeletons, a variety of skeletons, through nature, through nurture, circumstance. We all fight a lot. But it's my journey, and I'm going to deal with it. I'll be an adult. I'll look at it in the face. I'll open the closet and I'll look at the skeletons. And I'll decide one after another to do the best I can to become the best person I could be. So l'chaim to that. And please God, as we come to Rosh Hashanah this year, we shouldn't only look for meaningful experiences, which are nice, and fuzzy feelings, which chances are will not happen in the 2020 COVID Rosh Hashanah services. It's going to be very different. But again, you don't need to feel fuzzy to change. You just have to want to and be honest enough to face it. And then regardless of how good or bad the choir is or isn't, or sermon is or isn't, or who's sitting on your seat, it's irrelevant. Because to change, you could do it in your bedroom. You could do it in your garden. You could do it in your head. You don't need anything other than yourself and a solid commitment to face the truth. Shkoyach, everybody.